Today I'm going to present the professional development system in Slovenia, which is intended to foster the culture of lifelong learning and lifelong education. First of all, I'm going to give some general information about the professional system at the different levels in the country. And then I will pay particular attention to adult literacy teacher training in the country, which is very much connected with what we have been discussing on this workshop. So, generally speaking, the professional development system has been regulated by so-called Organization and Financing of Education Act, that regulates the conditions and qualifications of teachers in the country. Teachers all need to have at least higher education to teach, and also andragogic and pedagogical knowledge and skills. There are two types of institutions preparing teachers to become teachers or trainers or instructors. Higher education teacher training institutions, and also other higher education institutions where other professionals can be trained, and in that case they need additional andragogical and pedagogical education and training. The initial elementary school teacher training is provided only by 5 years lasting university courses since 1987. The secondary school teachers can be trained in higher education teacher training institutions, but also other professionals can enter the world of teachers if they have additional andragogical and pedagogical training and education, and in that case they can teach general vocational subject, technical and general vocational and technical schools. We have also quite a lot of vocational secondary schools, and their teachers of general subjects and theoretical subjects need to have university level, but there are quite a lot of instructors and also master craftsmen that don't need to have university level. They have just secondary school level at least. They need to have experiences with working with children, youth or adults, and they also need to have additional andragogical and pedagogical training. We have also post-secondary vocational education, where teachers have to meet the same requirements, but also they have to prove that they have special achievements in their fields. And I will pay particular attention, as I said before, to adult educators, which is in our country nowadays, I would say, a very important issue. So, adult educators in Slovenia need to have at least university level, of course, pedagogical and andragogical training. They need to pass a so-called professional examination in the field of education, and they need to have at least 3 years experiences with adult education. Adult institutions offering formal education for adults need to have not just teachers but also other profiles and staff like organizers, then teachers or people dealing with consulting, managers, etc. And in that case, they can be registered by the Ministry of Education. And in that case, they can also receive money by the Ministry of Education. People of non-formal education don't need to meet all these requirements that I mentioned before. In Slovenia, we have also, every year we prepare a so-called catalog for in-service training of teachers. And this catalog contains programs offered to teachers, and the programs have been selected according to certain criteria that have been accepted by the Ministry of Education. And there are 23 different areas. Adult education is one of the areas within this catalog. There are also a lot of institutions preparing teachers or offering in-service training of teachers, and some of them are private, some of them are public. Very important is the role of higher education institutions. Then we have Center for Vocational Education and Training. So then here is the role of Slovenian Institute for Adult Education. I would also like to mention the National Educational Institute or the National Institute for Education and Training. And also there are some other associations, NGOs, etc., etc. In regard to adult literacy teacher training, I would like to emphasize that teacher training for literacy teacher is not on the level of undergraduate studies. So we do not have adult literacy teachers, in fact, at the level of undergraduate study. In fact, teachers who want to become literacy teachers need to have university level, need to have experiences and, of course, andragogical and pedagogical knowledge and skills and professional examinations, but they need to have additional education and training. So before entering to this additional education and training, they have a sort of interview at Slovenian Institute for Adult Education, which means that not all of the teachers are appropriate to become literacy teachers. We look for teachers who are prepared to work with low literacy adults, who are open-minded, who do not have any prejudice. I would say that it's very important teachers to understand the concept of lifelong learning, lifelong education, and the concept of literacy. We also expect from them to understand the objectives, the aims of the literacy concept in the country. And also we expect them to understand and to be aware about the existence of very different target groups, having low level of literacy, how to motivate them, how to invite them to be involved in the literacy training, and also how to evaluate their results. The first training, literacy training in Slovenia, started in the year 1992. And ever since part of the professional development training of teachers. It is non-formal, as I said before, but teacher receive, but it's an accredited course, which means that adult literacy teacher training certificate is needed for public funding. All our courses are completely financed by the government through the Ministry of Education. The majority of teachers are part-time teachers, or I would say nowadays that almost all of the teachers are part-time teachers. And of course we have from time to time problems with irregular funding of adult literacy and adult literacy teacher training, and that's why it's not so regular. So what's the background of the literacy programs in Slovenia? You probably know that the National Literacy Survey was for Slovenia a cultural shock, which means that 77% of adults between 16 and 65 years performed below the international level. I will show you the results of Slovenia, among other countries, This was the International Adult Literacy Survey in 1998. So the results of adult population in Slovenia was very bad. As you can see, it was here, and that's why I said it was a sort of cultural shock. Because of the results, of very bad results, we had increased public funding for adult literacy and development and the provision of adult literacy programs. And because that, a new concept of adult literacy programs have been developed in the country. We also developed a national literacy strategy, which was prepared in the year 2005, and it was adopted a year later. And some elements of adult education were incorporated in the national literacy strategy. We also identified the target groups with very low literacy level. Almost all of them had less than 12 years of schooling. Then the most of them were young dropouts between 16 and 25 years. And here I would like particularly to emphasize the young group of people between 16 and 19 years. Then, of course, unemployed people, as in many other countries in Europe. Then low literacy employed, parents with school-age children who do not have enough time to read and write, and etc. Low income groups, then immigrants, and older age adults. So we decided to create particular literacy programs for those target groups. Up till now, we have about 7 different literacy programs. There are family literacy programs, 2 programs, particularly for parents of preschool children and parents of school-age children, 2 programs. Then we have a special program for rural literacy citizens. Then a workplace literacy program, which is very similar to the one that you showed to us today. The program for adults with special needs, bridge to education for adults returning to formal education, literacy program for elderly people, and there are some programs which are not targeted to any particular target group, but are for adults in general, and that's why they are shorter. The majority of programs are about 120 hours, and the largest is the workplace literacy, which is 300 hours. And here is our concept of adult literacy situation. As you can see, we have different or 5 different target groups. So we developed family literacy for our target group, then workplace literacy, adult returners to school, rural literacy, and literacy for people with special needs. All of those 5 different areas incorporated 5 core areas, which means basic skills, social skills, ICT, learning to learn, and active citizenship. That means that you can find all these skills in all the programs for very different target groups. So this concept was developed on the basis of our experiences and the research results from 2000. The legal and expert base for adult literacy teacher training. As I mentioned before, the law on organization and financing of education. It regulates adult education teacher qualifications. Then we have National Adult Education Master Plan. The last one was accepted 2 months ago. And adult literacy, a National Adult Literacy Strategy that I mentioned to you before, and it's a strategy of lifelong development of literacy in the country. I I have already discussed about the entry requirements and teachers. But to receive this certification, as I said before, teachers need additional education and training. So that additional education and training contains 120 hours of training, then field research on target group needs, then very active teaching performance, and also at the end, people or teachers have to prepare very detailed teacher program plan. We call it essay. And on the basis of that essay, we discovered whether they are prepared to be adult literacy teacher or not, whether they understood all the elements of adult literacy, working with target groups, identifying the target groups in different surroundings or not. So teachers in general need professional knowledge and understanding professional values and personal commitment and professional skills and abilities. So beside this university degree and adult literacy teacher training, teachers also have an opportunity for ongoing professional training and upgrading of their skills and competencies, which means that from time to time we organize at Slovenian Institute for Adult Education some courses or seminars where we invite practically all teachers in the field of literacy training and in fact explain them news in this field. We talk about new target groups, about new methods. We also use this ongoing professional training as a discussion. We discuss about their problems they face during the teaching and so on. The problem is that not all of the teachers are prepared to take part and to participate on this additional professional training and upgrading. So I would just like to mention some advantages of the system of adult literacy teacher training. As I said before, it's regulated publicly and it's funded by the Ministry of Education. From time to time monitored, not regularly now. Accredited training program, it's important also for the careers of teachers. We try to identify high profile adult literacy teacher force. They have a possibility for ongoing professional development. They are practically very flexible teaching force because they're sometimes part-time teachers. So some of them work also as teachers on very different levels. And also we can speak about positive transfer of innovation in formal system. So some of the news and some of the new competencies and skills that have been acquired during that train can be used also in their everyday learning and teaching practice. There are, of course, some disadvantages of the system of adult literacy teacher training. The first one is the absence of formal teaching qualifications. Then, particularly in the last 5 years, there is an irregular and insufficient funding that creates insecurity about the future. We do not know what is going to be with all these literacy programs and adults having low literacy levels. Then we have limited control over the quality and effectiveness of the programs, particularly in the last 5 years. And also, as I mentioned before, a low interest of part-time adult literacy teacher for further education and training in the field of adult literacy, which means when they once become adult literacy teachers, they're not interested to upgrade their knowledge and skills in this field. So we still have problems with that. So basically that's all I wanted to tell you today. If you have any questions or comments, I will be very happy to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jasmina.